Hello. Hello at the back. Thank you. So everyone's just started to fall asleep. Can you hear me okay at the back? Excellent. I was going to say Kalimera, but now it's lunchtime. Signomi then Milau Elenika. So I'm going to talk in English. My name is Duncan. I'm from a company called Travelport, and I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what we do as a business. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the trends that we currently see. So how does this work? Let's do this. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are. I'm going to tell you some trends that we observe. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the market. I'm going to talk to you about flights, and I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing. So a little about me. Travelport is a GDS, a distribution system predominantly for air, but for hotel and car. I'm not a GDS person. I come from the online world. So my background is meta search. I've worked with companies such as Skyscanner and TripAdvisor, and I ran the meta search company in the UK called Travel Supermarket. And I've also worked with companies like Late Rooms and Thomas Cook. About us as a business, we have over 3,000 employees. We've got offices in most of the countries in the world. We also have local offices, so we have an office here in Athens, and we've got a decent amount of revenue. So, the amount of transactions that we process is the same as the number of transactions that eBay processes, to give you an idea of the size of our flight searching. So, talking about what the industry represents, we see that there's an awful lot of spend online, and that's continuing to grow. And we see that online continues to grow, although it has slowed in the last 2 years. So if you look at this chart, the interesting thing for me is the green, where we see that it continues to grow, and we see that the total travel trend is growth. And okay, it's slow growth, but it is still growth, so it's not declining, which is good news for most of us in this room, if not all of us. What we're noticing, what I think is interesting, particularly in the online travel agency space, is that we have a change in consumer behaviour. So I'm 40. Pretty much anyone that is younger than me, I would call a digital native. They're people that have grown up with the internet, they've grown up with devices. If I think about people that are older than me or my age, we're digital immigrants. So, I remember when I didn't have a mobile phone, there was no internet. And that's quite an important distinction, because people that are younger are consuming data and using data in a totally different way to ever before. And I still see a lot of online players that aren't recognizing this massive shift in what people are doing. If you think about the fact that Facebook is 11 years old. My business started 40 years ago, but so much has changed even in 11 years. So what we're seeing is that people of the younger generation are shopping around. It's a product of the recession, meta search, Groupon, looking for the best price, but people are looking for deals, and that is here to stay, and it will get stronger and stronger as those younger internet users start to get older. So if we look at this graph, what this basically shows us is the newer generation of people, which are the blue, are behaving in a different way to people like me and older. So they're doing more shopping around. They've driven the meta search explosion that we've seen in the last 4 years. Overall, I think I've spoken about growth. The outlook is fairly confident, I think, if we look over Europe. But I think that OTAs are under a lot of pressure at the moment. I've seen this balance of power shift from OTA to meta, and I see that strengthening and consolidating. I also see that there's an issue with information. There's a lot of information out there. And our friend from Google, who spoke before me, there's a lot of information on Google. And relevancy and personalization becomes more and more important. A good example would be Skyscanner. If I'm traveling on business, it's just me. I won't check in bags. I'm not too bothered about the price. If I'm traveling with my family, I need to think about the children. I need to think about the duration. Do I have a meal? How many bags do I take? So they're two very different personalities, and there's a lot of information out there, and not all of it is accurate. Some stats here, and good luck for anyone who takes a photo of this slide, because it keeps changing. there's so much going on at the moment. I think the statistic for Facebook is enormous, something like 700 million logins a day. Most Facebook users log in at least twice a day. This is an amazing phenomenon, and I spoke about trends before, and you know, it's staggering how this is happening. There is so much media being put into the online space in this day and age. There's so much of it. And what we have, or what research shows, is that we have the majority of consumers are frustrated when shopping for travel. There's too much information, it's not relevant. If I'm traveling with my children, I don't want to see something that isn't child-friendly. And still, over a quarter of people searching for online products in travel don't have the confidence that they got the best deal that they could get, which is interesting. Meta search was mentioned before. Here are some interesting figures in terms of the growth of meta search. And coming from a meta search background myself, I've really noticed this. It is growing. TripAdvisor's growth is partly fueled by the new technology. Their mobile app downloads are something in the region of 12 million. That has really fueled their growth because that has now become something that a lot of people use on their smartphones throughout their travel journey. Skyscanner continues to grow aggressively, and these meta search grow partly because of the low cost and the budget proposition that they have, where it's all about price. We also have Meta. The world is going mad. Cheap Flights Finder actually searches meta search sites. So if you can imagine that you are an OTA with Skyscanner, the chances of you getting a booking via this avenue are quite slim. And the problem is that you're still sending the data out there in the results. One of the things that I think is important as an OTA is to consider stickiness. For me, there are three things that are important for an OTA. There's customer acquisition and retention, which is the stickiness. There's distribution, and there's conversion. But the stickiness is more important than ever before because people are very promiscuous in terms of where they go and what they buy. And we saw a slide in the previous presentation about how important brand is. And that is something that, for me, has to be a part of anyone's strategy, online or offline. We also see lots of challenges in terms of the search experience. So we have a fairly standard experience for users looking for products. There's not a lot of differentiation here, so people can easily do a search, and if something fails or their connection goes down, they will very quickly move to another website. And again, another stat, 68% of travelers aren't decided on where they're going or how much they're going to spend before they start searching, which I think is quite interesting. How do you target those customers and try and get them to stay on your website and actually purchase something? And what we find is that the minority of users actually know where they want to go. They may have an idea of price, and my own experience is that I'm thinking I want to take the children on holiday, maybe we'll spend 2,000 euros, but I don't know where we'll go. It needs to be a short flight within 4 hours duration from the UK. That's quite common in the marketplace. So with this slide, this is quite interesting because this shows the journey that people take when they traditionally book. So if you think about it as a funnel or a glass, at the top of the glass is where I'm thinking I want to go somewhere. I think I know how much I want to spend, but I don't know where, and I'm not sure when. As I move down and do my research, I then decide, okay, I'm going to Athens. Okay, my budget is 400 euros. Yes, I think I'll go at the beginning of December because the weather's lovely. What we see a movement up and down this funnel with the traditional channels. Meta search has always been towards the bottom when you're checking the price and booking, and that's where the OTAs tend to be. We've traditionally seen Google at the top of that funnel, but what we have seen with things like Google Flight Finder and also with meta search acquiring other companies is a movement up and down this funnel, which again presents a lot more information for the consumer. So we see Expedia and their acquisition into meta search. We see Kayak tying up with Priceline, which is interesting in terms of how app technology will be developing. And we see TripAdvisor, who are continuing to grow in the transactional space. Conversion, I mentioned that was a big thing for OTAs. It's one of my big three. Still an issue. And what we have here is we have, how a quick stat on what people do. And what we find is that a lot of people search on OTA and then book direct. And I know I'm probably one of the worst people for doing this. I will go on Skyscanner and find out who flies where. I will go on the OTA site and see what the price is, and then I'll say, okay, I'll go to EasyJet and book it. And I think that's quite common. And people of the younger generation are doing this more and more, and the airlines are actually helping people to do this because they're encouraging people to go direct. Because if I go to an OTA, I cannot choose my seat. I cannot choose that meal that I need because I'm traveling with my children in the evening. And if I want to upgrade to the flexi fare, very, very few OTA show that information. And that, for me, is the big challenge for OTA against the airlines direct. And we're seeing the airline direct channel grow. We're seeing OTAs grow, but the airline direct is growing a lot more strongly. So I mentioned earlier that we're growing as an industry, but that there are some challenges. One of the challenges for me is this budget model. And we see it particularly in the UK market, which is driven by dynamic packaging and using EasyJet and Ryanair, for example. We also see it here in Greece. Ryanair have come in and are really disrupting the market, but they're also changing the way that customers behave. They're educating customers onto the Ryanair model. And as a traditional OTA, you have to consider that and you have to do something, because Facebook is 11 years old. Ryanair is now in Greece. What you do as an online agency has to move with the times, very important. And we'll see here that although growth has slowed on the graph over to the right, there is still growth in the LCC space, and it will continue. To give you some more information on that, and if you look at the two bubbles here, the low-cost carriers have grown phenomenally in the last 5 years. They've grown 5 times more than traditional scheduled airlines like KLM and Lufthansa. And that, to me, is partly consumer behaviour. It's partly Ryanair and EasyJet educating people to go direct to get the best price. And it's partly because of the recession, the economy, where people they're not wanting to pay 300 euros for a flight now when they know they can get it for 70 euros. Less relevant here, but still relevant in Europe overall, is the rail network. We're seeing that is continuing, and this charts how we project and see that rail in Europe will continue to grow, and it has changed how people behave. If we look at some of the routes that we have in Europe, you'll see that people who are traveling from Madrid to Barcelona, or people that are traveling from Brussels to Paris, the airline routes are now dead. It's rail, and it makes much, much more sense. And we're seeing massive growth. We're seeing an enormous amount of investment in rail moving forwards. A trebling of the infrastructure in rail in Europe is forecast, which is significant. And that will change what consumers do. So I mentioned how it changes routes, and this is a bit of a complicated slide, but what it shows you is that the Paris to Brussels journey time, if you look on the right-hand side, you will see that rail has become a significant factor and has changed how people travel. 10 years ago, people were flying. Now they're taking the rail option. For me, what makes that interesting is, what if, as a consumer, I am on an OTA website and I'm looking for a route, and it shows me the air options and it also shows me the rail, because I'm thinking that then instead of going through security, I can go to the train station, I can spend the time working, I can spend the time sleeping. It's less disruptive, and often it's cheaper. So we've seen this phenomenon particularly in Spain, where it has fundamentally affected some of the key internal Iberia routes that are taken. And again, this is another consumer trend that continues to grow as investment continues in the network. Ancillaries, so extras, seats, bags, guns, unaccompanied minors. They also class in-flight sales, so food and drink, your bottle of wine for 15 euros or whatever it is. The airlines are very keen to push this because they don't make so much money on the fares anymore. What is interesting for me is how limited we are buying those products on an OTA or on a meta search. If I go to Ryanair, I get a menu of all the things that I can pick. I don't really see that in OTA websites, and the first OTAs that do this will, for me, be the next evolution of OTA. It's been very stagnant for the last 4 years, and it will happen. It has to happen because the airline direct channel is growing because of these options. And by that, I also mean the fares. So yes, it's about lowest price, but if I could pay 20 euros more and have that meal for my children for the evening flight, or the extra legroom on a 3.5-hour flight, there's a value there, and I might well buy it. And we're seeing this with the airlines, with their upsell. And you see it quite commonly when you search on an airline website, and you see 3 grids: the cheapest fare, the one that's semi-flexible, and then the fully flexible, really, really expensive one. And obviously the cheapest fare is attractive, but I may need to cancel or amend my flight, so I'll go for the middle one because it's available and I can see the difference. If I'm a business traveller, I'll go for, unless I have a capped budget, I'll go for, whichever one. It doesn't matter to me. But it's interesting that OTA are still struggling to show these different fares and upsell. So here we see a good example of what I would say is the difference in looking at what the fares are. So you see you've got lots of different options, and you can do lots of different things on the left on the airline website. On the OTA website on the right, it's a more poor experience, definitely. I mentioned OTA versus direct growth. So if we see the green line, that is the growth of airline.com, and the line below is the growth of OTA. And we see that the airlines are outgrowing the OTA in terms of spend online. That, for me, is very interesting, and I think that the main reason for that is this extra option functionality. More fares, semi-flexible, economy plus, economy premium, all the ancillaries. Yes, I want a meal for my children. Yes, I want to take my skis. And this ultimately challenges the proposition of an OTA as a one-stop shop. And what it does to me is it means that consumers are looking at price on OTA websites and meta search, but they're looking at content on the airline websites. And as an OTA, in order to improve conversion, you need to have good content as well as good price. So the one-stop shop of the past is now being seriously challenged by what consumers want and what websites like Ryanair and EasyJet have educated consumers to buy. We have a very fragmented market as well. So talking about hotel, the hotel market is very commoditized. There are lots of different players and lots of different ways that you can purchase a hotel. When you travel, you generally buy the flight first because you're more limited. You've got loads of choice of hotels. So, that's, for me, a very challenging area for an OTA, but also an area where you make money. What we see is that hotel is still a very, very important factor because people tend to get a cheap flight and then they think, great, I saved 50 euros per head on the flight. That gives me more money for the hotel. Of course, the challenge is then that in this day and age, people want a 5-star hotel for 3-star money, but that's another matter. So here again, we have another slide with lots of figures, but what we're looking at is chain hotels versus independent hotels, essentially. And we'll see that chains dominate Australasia and America. And, this is true. The Americans, when they travel, they like to stay in Sheraton, they like to stay in Hilton, they like to stay in brands they recognize. Certainly in Europe, we have many more smaller hotel chains, independent hotels. It's a very fragmented market, which makes it a challenge for distribution because there are so many different sources that you can pick, and people want more and more. Airbnb is a great example. People want different things to stay in. I love that hotel. My kids would love it too. It looks great. Stay in a plane, but you don't have to fly anywhere, and there's no security check, and you can take as many liquids as you like. It would be great. Wine and beer. But people want more than just a hotel box in a city centre. They want more options. They want more personalisation. So that's enough of a snapshot about where we are at the moment. As a big global technology company, I thought I'd share with you a few ideas on what we're doing at the moment, in the face of all of this change. So the way that we kind of look at it is in four ways. Content, an open platform of technology so that it's easily developed and integrated. Selling, which incorporates content and search, and also payments. And when we look at what we do, we have something that we call the merchandising platform. Now, our merchandising platform essentially provides an OTA or an online player with the technology to show different fare families, economy, premium economy, economy plus, and the different options that are included within it. And it also enables an OTA to show low-cost carriers and airlines in the same results set as the rail option as well. Now, other companies out there are talking about how this is on their roadmap and this is their vision for the future. We're doing it now, and we have a number of customers that are doing this. And this is going to change the OTA landscape significantly. So we take together scheduled air and low-cost carriers. We also take the different products that an airline will sell. For any of you, just a quick show of hands, does anyone in here regularly fly with Ryanair? We don't have many people that regularly, has anyone ever flown with Ryanair? Okay, we don't like Ryanair. For the two of us in the room that do fly with Ryanair, we obviously have very tight budgets. You'll notice they've introduced a new fare, which is a business fare. And this is quite interesting for me because they're now trying to offer speedy boarding included, more baggage, seat. And they're packaging it a bit like EasyJet, a bit like a traditional airline. We offer this content. We offer the additional fares, the €20 for premium economy with more bags, that kind of thing. And then the ancillaries, unaccompanied minor, weapons, skis, extra bags. This is something that the airlines are doing, beginning to deconstruct on their own websites more and more. We have technology that offers that for an OTA to display. Meta can't do this. Most OTAs are talking about it, but can't do this. This is something that will change the game and is the potential to give an OTA the power back again in this struggle between Meta and airline direct. So this gives you a quick insight into the kind of data that's available. So we show EasyJet, British Airways, and also the rail option. Imagine how powerful that is if you're doing results for Brussels to Paris, when you can offer the one Air France flight that exists, but also the rail options as well. It's very, very powerful. And consumers want that. Remember, 28% of consumers are not convinced that they have got the best deal. And what is the best deal? Is it the best price, or is it the best overall purchase that they've made? We also have here the breakdown of the different fares, and this is a British Airways example. You go on to BA.com and you have these different options. We display all of this. Just go back quickly. We display all of this, and we also display what is included in each fare. And this is technology that an OTA can put on their website. It's very powerful. And when we talk about stickiness and conversion and upsell, this is very, very important content. In terms of hotel, what we have is essentially a meta search product for hotels. So we have the technology that compares a number of different sources and provides the best price. That's something that's quite powerful. That includes chain hotels and also independent hotels. And it also includes hotels that you would not ordinarily get from your traditional sources. We also have the ability to tap into corporate rates and corporate hotels within this meta search. What that means is that properties that aren't available via traditional sources, such as Booking.com or Expedia, are available through us. So it's unique content in the mass market. Currently online, we offer just over 400,000 properties. We run a meta search of 10 different hotel suppliers, and it can be integrated via one technology feed. So I'm not talking about loads of different integrations. It's worldwide. So you'll see there in the dark blue are what we would term the traditional GDS hotels. These are generally the chain hotels that are within our system. What we call rooms and more, which is our wider, more meta proposition, includes a lot more hotels as well. Combine the two and you have a very good mix of traditional chain hotels and independent hotels as well. Good example here, Kiruna in Sweden, the Ice Hotel. This is just one example of some of the independent content that we have. What we also find is that by using this technology, if someone is sold out, we can find someone else that still has availability. And that's pretty good. And what we also find is that by using regional and sometimes local suppliers, we can get content that you wouldn't normally get through a traditional bed bank. And that's also the same for our car hire proposition, where we're bringing out local car hire rental companies that you would not ordinarily get from the larger aggregators. On this slide, the arrows for me are the important thing. 4 things that are important to us. I think they should be, if they aren't already, very important to any OTA or anyone who has anything online. Speed. People want things quicker and quicker and quicker. One of the reasons why mobile booking is still behind all the other channels is because of speed. It's because of the internet access. Relevancy. If I'm traveling on my own, I don't want the meal. I've got hand luggage only. If I'm with my family and my kids, I want the meal in the evening. I want more luggage. Maybe I want speedy boarding because my daughter is being a pain. I don't want an 8-hour interconnecting flight with my 7-year-old because that's a nightmare. So relevancy is very important depending on what the customer wants. Accuracy as well, of course. When in a world of too much information, the accuracy is important. And also choice. We mentioned Airbnb. We mentioned EasyJet. We mentioned British Airways, we mentioned rail. People want more options than just a simple A to B. They want to know what else is out there. People want more. And in our industry, like many others, we end up having to provide more and probably earn less money. But customers want more and they want to pay less money. And that's the world that we're in, unfortunately. We have a pretty cool tool here, and one thing I'd urge you to do, if you have a spare 5 minutes, is to go onto the App Store and download the Priceline app and have a look at this inspirational search. It's an open-jaw search that basically says, I want to go somewhere and I want to fly for no more than 4 hours and I want some sun. And what it will do in live time, it will return live pricing for where you go, and you can choose culture, beach, sightseeing, shopping. And this for me is, when we talk about stickiness, an important tool. You can also see an example of this on the Emirates website. So if you go onto the Emirates website and you scroll down to where it says Inspire Me, you can run a search on the Emirates network like it shows on the slide, and it will give you these options. We call it Flex Explore. It's essentially an inspirational search. Now this is quite good for that 60+% of users who start searching and they're not quite sure where they want to go. But for me, I might not know where I want to go, but I know I'm going to have the children with me. I know I don't want a flight for more than 4 hours, and I know that we want a beach holiday. Or if it's me and my wife, we want to go on a weekend break with some culture and some shopping. This kind of tool provides me with relevant content in return, which is great. Download the Priceline app and have a play around with it. It's particularly cool on a tablet because you can draw a map and zoom in. And we also have a number of tools available to travel agencies that enable them to control what airline results they get back. So you can restrict a certain route, you can promote a certain airline. If there is bad weather and an airport is closed, you can avoid that airport being called. If there is a strike, you can make differences to the routings that come up in people's searches. Again, this is targeting results. So, that's about it for me. I was conscious of time, and I went through fairly quickly because my slot was about 40 minutes late. So, thank you very much for listening.